let's talk about uncertainties and the information asymmetries. Okay. So this information we talk about are considered as evidence that can potentially affect individuals' decisions. Okay. So you think about a lot of our scenarios in our lives. We need information to make a decision, right? So I don't think I had to elaborate on that. But for accounting purpose, right? Investors, bankers, a lot of other parties, they need accounting information to make decisions. And these decisions will be important. Investors, if they invest in the wrong companies, they can lose their money. The bankers, if they give loan to the poor companies, they could lost all their money, right? They cannot get money back from these borrowers, right? So the external parties, they are making important decisions. They demand for financial information. They demand for financial reporting. Who has more information? Okay, well, the companies, insiders, right? Managers and CEOs, they have more information because they are responsible for the daily operations of the company. Okay, so they know how company is doing. They know what their plan in the future in 10 years. But the bankers doesn't know anything probably. Okay, the bankers will rely on the financial reporting to make some assessment. Okay, so there's the information asymmetry. Okay, so the suppliers, the managers, CEO, board of directors, they have information advantage over the demander, which are the investors, the bankers, the debtors. Okay, so for investors, there is uncertainty because I can't trust what they are telling me. Are they really telling me all the information? Did they tell me the whole story? Did they hide any important informations, right? So there's uncertainty when they make decisions. Maybe I'm giving loan to the wrong person, right? There are uncertainties exist. So let's talk about problem 1-3 on page 16. So the question is, discuss the concepts of uncertainty, information asymmetry, and the supply of demand for information when a corporation applies for bank loan. What is the uncertainty when a corporation applies for bank loan? Anyone?
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
Some of the uncertainty can be like the going for example, like the going concern of the organization may not be known when they apply for bank information.
Okay, very good. Maybe bank will, maybe the company go bankrupted, right? Maybe the next day, right? Yeah, very good. How about the uncertainty? Maybe the company is not capable of paying back the loan, right? They're not, nobody is, considering COVID-19, right? So not all of a sudden many business, right? Restaurants, many industries, including transportation, air transportation, tourism, they are all affected, right? So they probably have a hard time to pay back the loan to the bank. What is the information asymmetry?
Is it just one party having more information than the other one?
Yeah. So the corporation managers have better information, more information than the bankers, right? Okay, and the supply demand for information. So the supply, the corporation has to provide the information, supply information, because they need to get a loan. Without the information, the bank will not give them a loan, right? And the bank demand for information because they rely on the information to make assessment, to evaluate the risks of the corporation. Okay. It's pretty clear. So just give you a quick example. You can see that this information environment, there's a demander, there's a supplier, and the suppliers have information advantage, okay? And the demander is facing uncertainty, okay? There are two types of information asymmetry. One is adverse selection. The other one is called moral hazard, okay? So this is two important concepts I wish you would be able to grasp at the end of this lecture. So what is adverse selection? I'm not sure how many of you have read the textbook. Chazen, you read the textbook? Okay. No. Okay.
Sorry, I was just holding my hand up.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. No, I've read it, but.
So I think if you have read the textbook, it gives us a really good example about what is adverse selection. So I'm only going to summarize it here. So suppose you buy a used car, right? So so the buyer is having a information disadvantage. Seller has an information advantage. The seller knows whether how the car has been driven, right? This car was maintained very well? Did they change the oil regularly? Are they driving the car with good care? So the buyer will have all this information, but the seller, the seller will have all this information, but the buyer will not know, right? So by just walking around the car, right? You know, you don't see too much, right, about the car. So then, you know, there's the information asymmetry. So the seller will have more information than the buyer. Okay, so the buyer is facing uncertainty. What if I spend all this money and I buy a really bad car, right? And the next day I'm going to repair it. And it costs me like another $2,000, $3,000, right? So you see, that's the uncertainty right there. So that therefore, you know, the buyers would try to pay as much as the buyer will just try to pay minimum amount of money to buy it, right? Because there's uncertainty, right? So the seller, if they know, right, my car is a good car, they worth more money, they will not sell it, right? Because the seller know better about the car. So then whenever there is an agreement, right, there is a deal, you would think that the buyer is paying too much, right? Because if you didn't pay enough, ideally the seller will not sell you, right? Because the seller knows their car is a good car. So then what happened is eventually all the Lyman cars is traded in the market, okay? Because only those sellers of the Lyman cars are willing to take your lowball offer, okay? And so that's called adverse selection. Because the information asymmetry, there is hidden information, possibly on the information supplier side. Okay, so that's the adverse selection example. Okay, so how are they gonna deal with this, right? The seller will say, my car is the best car, you know, you will ever find in this market, right? Cheap talk, right? But then, you know, the buyer won't believe it, right? The buyer is like, yeah, you know, everyone will say so, right? If you are trying to sell your car, you won't say my car is a very bad car, right? So the cheap talk doesn't help, right? Cheap talk doesn't help to address the information asymmetry, as you know, people don't believe you, right? And this cheap talk is costless. It's quite easy for the seller just to make that statement, and they are not legally responsible for the statement they make. Okay. So usually in this case, if the seller wants to sell the car for a good price, to convince the buyer to pay a good price, they have to have a costly signal. They have to make a signal that is costly. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, they will pay an independent inspector, okay, to certify the car. This is the used car, but guess what? I have a report, certified report from an independent inspector. Here, you can see I paid $300 for this inspection report, right? So with that report, the buyer will be more comfortable, right? Because this is an independent inspector, right? And they certified this used car as, you know, seems like pretty good, right? So you have that, you know, in that way, it helps the seller to reduce the uncertainty, okay? But this signal in the form of certified report is costly. It costs money to the seller. The cheap talk doesn't cost anything, but it won't be useful. But the costly signal will help in this situation, okay? Moral hazard. Moral hazard. What is moral hazard? Okay. So the adverse selection is really about the information was hidden, right? The old information in the past was hidden, was not revealed to the other party. This moral hazard is about future actions, is not observable, okay? So one party to a contract cannot observe some actions relating to the fulfillment of the contractual terms by the other, okay? What does that mean? For example, okay, if I signed a rental contract with a rental company, okay? So I am going to drive the car. So how I will drive the car is a future action, right? Will be the action after the contract is signed.
Hello?
The national rental, the rental company, they will not send a person to sit beside me, right? Just to observe how I drive the car. Did I drive with enough care, right? They will not, right? So they will not be able to see how I drive the car. Did I run over the bump at a very fast speed, right? Right? They don't know. Well, it's not my car. So maybe there's a moral hazard. Maybe, you know, I just feel it's not my car. I can just care less. I can care less, right? So therefore, this is a problem, right? So you sign this rental contract, but the rental company, they are not able to observe my future action after the contract was signed, okay? So the outcome of moral hazard is that the parties may take on risks because the negative consequence of those risks will be borne by someone else. Okay, so I will take on risks that I will run over the bump at 50 kilometers per hour, very, very fast speed. And that's gonna hurt the car, but maybe the damage is not obvious, right? People will not observe that damage, but it's gonna damage the car, right? But this consequence will not be on me, right? I'm going to return the car, you know, at the end of the term in 2 days, right? So the fact the car is damaged, that negative consequence will be a consequence to the rental company, right? So you can see this is called a moral hazard, right? So there is a, you know, ethical issues involved about my action. Because I'm not responsible for the negative consequence, you know, I can care less about my action, okay? So it's different from adverse selection, okay? So if a person think about a person buy insurance, I will give you another example, right? Because you have insurance, right? And you know that even if I'm in a crash, the insurance company is going to pay for everything. Therefore, I'm going to drive crazy, right? I'm going to drive 200 kilometers per hour. Because if I crash, hopefully I will not die, right? If, you know, that's a negative consequence on me, right? But if the car is damaged, right, the insurance covers it. So, you know, I can just be crazy, right? Very aggressive when I'm driving. You can see that's a moral. It's about my future action after I sign the insurance contract, right? Okay, so you can see where this moral hazards comes from. It's really about our behavior, right? So moral hazard is very costly. Right? Moral hazard is very costly. Okay, let's go through some problems from page 1 to 11. Problem 1-11, and that's page 17. Okay, so there are 3 scenarios. I want you to tell me which category it goes: adverse selection or moral hazard. Okay. By the way, if you participate in the class, after the class, you're gonna send me an email telling me that, you know, my name is who and who, and I answered this question. Okay, so I will count that as your participation for this class. Okay, so there are 3 scenarios. Tell me that scenario, is that a moral hazard or is adverse selection? Okay, the first one, a mortgage company intends to sell pools of loans to investors on a non-recourse basis. The mortgage company does not attempt to confirm the veracity of the mortgage applicant's declared income. Is this a moral hazard or an adverse selection?
I think it's a case of adverse selection.
Adverse selection?
Yes.
Okay, so adverse selection is about information is hidden, right? Hidden information in the past, right? Can you please tell me to see pointing to what information is hidden and which information here is in the past?
Okay, so I think in this case, the mortgage company did not disclose the fact that the mortgage,
yeah, you are right. So the mortgage company
in the past, right?
The mortgage company have an action. The action is choose not to confirm the veracity of the mortgage applicant's declared income. That's the action. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they did not attempt to confirm the veracity of the mortgage application declared income.
Yeah.
Sorry, the mortgage applicant's declared income. So that's what is hidden here.
Oh, that was hidden here. You mean the declared income that was hidden?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Tulo. Anyone else?
I think one's moral hazard example.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Can you please elaborate on why it's a moral hazard?
Because the mortgage company doesn't attempt to confirm the mortgage applicant's declared income, so the risk will be borne by the buyers. In the example is the investors. So that's why. So that's moral hazard, I think.
Okay, so very good. So what happened is, you know, the mortgage companies, so they are not, so, you know, they are not taking the risk, right? They know that if they do not verify the income, there's a negative consequence, right? The negative consequence is that the mortgage will be default, right?
Yes.
So that will be the consequence. But that consequence is not borne by the mortgage company. It was borne by the investor, right? So because of that, because they are not taking the risk of that negative consequence, they choose not to do it. That is a moral hazard. Very good. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and on top of that, there is the costly. The mortgage is a costly as well. If the case is a moral hazard, and then it's the costly.
Yes, the negative consequence is very costly.
Yeah.
If the mortgage applicant default their mortgage. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to add that, yeah, I agree with her that the mortgage is costly, but most times the collateral is always more than the mortgage you are taking, and that is a no-recourse basis. But the cost to the mortgage company will be if they now want to sell the collateral, you know, the time, that's the time value of money it will take for them. I think that is the cost. But I agree that this is adverse.
Okay, yeah, thank you for your comment. Yeah. So the next one is your friend intends to declare bankruptcy at the end of the month. Between now and then, he plans to charge the maximum amount of possible on his credit cards.
I think it's adverse selection.
Adverse selection, why?
Yeah, because there's hidden information. As your friend is charging to his credit card, the credit card companies don't know yet that he's going to declare bankruptcy at the end of the month.
Okay.
So then they will just allow they will just allow the credit.
Okay. So is this okay, so okay, so anyone else?
I think this is a moral hazard because my friend knows that, yeah, he has somewhere to push the risk to. And because once it's bankruptcy, you can't get the money back, no money, you know. So I think he knows that the risk can be pushed to the credit card.
Okay. And Rashbo, you have
yeah, I think it's moral hazard.
Yeah.
Because the person doesn't have any money left as is bankrupt. And if he decides to get as much money as possible, the risk will be borne to the bank, which is someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think it's moral.
Yeah, what is the future action? Because the moral hazard is always related to a future action after the contract is signed, right? What is the future action?
That the bank won't get money.
Yeah, so the future action would be the friend will charge the maximum amount possible on his credit cards, right? That's his future action. And that action is not observable, right? He has that idea, right? That action is not observable when they sign the contract, right? So the negative consequence would be that, you know, he's not be able to pay it back because he's gonna declare bankruptcy, right?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a future action, right?
Yeah.
He plans to do something that is morally wrong, right? You know you're gonna declare bankruptcy, but you still want to apply for a credit card, and you plan to charge the maximum amount of it. So, so when you, when you do this, this is the action morally wrong, right? You are.
Yeah.
It's moral hazard.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Excuse me.
Hey, go ahead.
Hey, thank you. So moral hazard and adverse selection, the difference between the two is that moral hazard is always in the future. It's a future action or
moral hazard is about your future action after you enter into a contract.
And adverse selection is
you are hiding your previous past and all the information when you enter the contract.
That makes it a lot more clear. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. This is not that quite straightforward. When I first learned this, I have to really, think through this. It's not that straightforward. But I think if you practice more, I would encourage you to read a textbook. They show you the difference. They use one example to show the difference. Okay.
Once it comes in the mail, I promise I will.
Okay, I did send you a scanned copy.
I did read that, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, 2 to 9, you betcha.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, the last one, you do not use the alarm systems in your fully insured home because it's too much trouble.
Adverse selection.
Adverse
selection. Paul. Yeah, adverse selection.
I would say this is moral hazard. It's
moral hazard?
Pretty relatable.
I think it's moral
I would say this is moral hazard.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can it be both of them together?
So it can be both together. It's either one or the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, for this one, you're not trying to kind of hide historical information. It's
yeah,
like
I heard a lot of, sorry, Chazen. I heard a lot of students saying moral hazard. So Chazen, please elaborate your thoughts, thinking process, why this is a moral hazard.
This is exactly like the car example you put out. Now that it's fully insured, they're going to act reckless and, not take full precautions to protect their home just because it's insured. So if it gets broken in, they steal everything. They don't really care as much.
Yeah, very good. So the two parties is you and the insurance company, right? That's the two parties. And you guys get entered into a contract. That's the insurance contract. You pay premium, right? And then after the contract, the future action is that you decide not to use the alarm system, right? So that's your future action after you enter the contract with the insurance company, right? And it's risky if you don't activate the alarm system. If there's fire, you won't know right away. So there's a higher chance that the house will be burned down, right? And that negative consequence, the insurance company will cover the cost, but the negative consequence will be borne by the insurance company, not by you, right? Because you have insurance. So because your house is covered, you decide after I get this insurance policy, I care less. So it's morally wrong, right? Morally, it's wrong. So,
sorry, could you give me an example of an example sort of similar to this for a adverse selection? Then?
Okay, very good. I will do that. Okay, thank you. So here, I'm going to give you one example for the adverse selection. It's called life insurance premium. Okay, so maybe at my age, I have young kids, right? So I have to have a life insurance. Okay, even in my culture, the superstitious culture is always against of don't talk about death, right? It's really bad to think of being dead. But in this culture, make sure you have life insurance as soon as you have a family, you have kids, right? Especially if you are the main income earner of the family, right? You are responsible for the kid. Anything can happen to any of us anytime, right? If you drive in the highway, right? COVID-19, whatever. So we need to have this life insurance. So when you get into a agent talking about the life insurance, they will ask you, are you a smoker? Right? So then, you would say, how it matters, right? If you said yes, they would evaluate your risk as being very high to die young, right? Because smoking, lots of science, lots of studies has shown that smoking is related to lung cancer, things like that, right? So right away, they're gonna charge you higher premium because you are a smoker, right? So then you will tell them, I'm not a smoker, right? You will tell them, I'm not a smoker. Then they believed you, okay? They believed you and they signed the contract. So they charge you a premium based on the fact that, based on your claim that you are not a smoker, okay? So now think about what happened, right? Think about what happened. So the insurance company know people will hide this important information, right? They are going to charge high premiums on people, right? And then those healthy people, they think, guess what? You are charging too high, right? If I balance out the risk probability of me die, okay, and of the premium policy I'm paying, and how much money I'm going to get from you if I die, it's not worthy of your premium. I'm not buying your premium. It's too high. It's not worthy of it. Okay, I'm going to take that chance. Right? That chance is not very high, but I'm going to take that chance because your premium is too high. So then who is going to end up using the insurance company? Are those people are not healthy, right? They think, oh, even you charge a high premium because I have a poor health situation, it's still worthwhile for me to buy your insurance. So in this situation, only those people that with poor health are adversely selected in the market. They are the only person who will buy this life insurance premium, right? So this is the life insurance. We are not talking about if you will smoke, if you will drink after you sign the contract, okay? We are not talking about what you're gonna do after you have an insurance premium. We are talking about when you entered into this agreement, did you hide any information? That's what we're talking about, adverse selection. Okay, so in this case, the smoker will not revealing the fact that they are smoking. Okay, so we are not talking about, for this scenario, we're not talking about whether the smokers, whether a non-smoker will continue smoking. Okay, so if a non-smoker decides to smoke after the insurance contract is signed, what is that?
That's the moral hazard.
Yeah, that's moral hazard, right? Because you are saying, you know, if I die, I get money, right? The risk of me die is now on the insurance company because they are going to pay me money. Well, I will evaluate my life more than anything, right? The insurance company can pay me. The idea is, you know, the moral hazard, right, is about your future action. The adverse selection is about your past information. Does that help, Paul?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thanks.
Very good. So another example I can give you is about you know, Lyman houses, right? Lyman houses. A number of years ago, when Calgary was booming, you know, in the airport area, the real estate was developing very, very fast, right, in the airport area. So what happened is they didn't give chance for the rattler snakes to move quickly, right? Because the people invaded their habitat so fast, they didn't even have time to respond, to leave that habitat. So what happened is one person coming from a different province, they were shopping for a house, right? And they found a very, very cheap house, nice house. They decided to buy it. And then guess what? In the basement, we have kids at home. In the basement, there are rattlers, okay? And then the local people in Calgary, they all know about this. Nobody will buy those houses, right? But these people, he doesn't know. He thinks that price is pretty good for that house, right? So you can see that when they buy the house, right? This end up to be a Lyman house, right? Because of the information asymmetry. Does that make sense? If you rent a house, right? You know, you are not, you have a deposit, but the deposit is only, the charge deposit is only $100. You think, okay, so it's only $100. This is not my house. Guess what? After signing the contract, I'm going to just like crazy with the house. It's not my house. You know, if it's dirty, I'm not gonna keep it clean. And if the house is broken, you know, if I'm moving furniture, I don't care if you knock the hole in the wall, right? So that would be moral hazard, right? Because the negative consequence is just about, you know, the owner is gonna take that, right? You only lose maximum $100. You don't care, right? You see what's the difference between adverse selection versus moral hazard? Any questions?
I think it's pretty clear.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Arlene. Okay, we'll continue. How are we doing with time? Okay. Still have, so we finished 45, right? We still have half an hour. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so how are we gonna deal with these situations, right? We just talked about this information asymmetry. We understand what is information, what is adverse selection, what is moral hazard. Now, how are we gonna deal with this? Because how are we gonna overcome these barriers of information asymmetry so that you know, the negative consequence can be avoided? So to overcome adverse selection, you're going to use costly signaling, right? For example, you're going to have inspection, right? If you buy a house, right, either the owner or the buyer, they're going to hire independent inspectors to check the house, to make sure the house is okay, right? If they have good inspectors, they probably will detect that, guess what? Maybe it's hard, right, to know there's returners. Who knows, right? But anyways, when you have this independent parties to help you to verify, to certify things, it helps to overcome that information asymmetry, right? For the moral hazard, in the accounting scenario, right? What is adverse selection? The signaling would be paying dividend, okay? So, if you want to really attract investors, you want to say that, my company has a very strong earnings. Then pay dividend, right? You make money, pay your shareholders, right? So you use that dividend policy to signal that you have a strong earnings, right? Okay, so do you see that? The cost for that signaling is that you cannot keep this money in your return earnings for future investment, right? So whenever you pay dividend, your return earnings will be lower, right? You have less money fundings to invest, right? So that's the cost of this signal. So I want to signal to investors that I'm earning good money. I'm going to pay dividend to my investors. But the cost for this signal is you cannot keep the maximum amount of money for future investment. For moral hazard, what is moral hazard? Okay, so we call this a classical principal agent problem. Okay, so here, what is this agency problems? So you think about the Walt Disney company, right? The Disney company. The owners are not the manager. So the owners are separate from the manager. Okay, so who are the owners? I will show you who are the owners of Disney company. So this institution investors. Can you see the Vanguard Group Incorporation? They owned 7.25% of the Disney company. So these are the large institution investors. Okay, so they are the owners. And the second largest owners is the BlackRock Fund Advisor, 4.55%. Okay, so they are the owners, right? They own the company. Who is the manager? Who is the CEO? Okay, so CEO is Bob Iger. Okay, Bob Iger, CEO chairman was Disney. Okay, so he's the owner. Sorry, he's the manager, and he's paid really well. So let me see here. I'm gonna try this. So he received, okay, so his compensation was too generously. Even the Disney heiress Abigail called his pay insane. Okay. He received the perks worth 1.1 million. So his 2019 package is 2018 compensation is $146 million. Okay. That's how much he was paid. He is the manager.